Hey, folks, about a week ago, I covered the news that the U.S. Department of State had designated four Europe-based Antifa groups as foreign terrorist organizations. When a group is hit with that FTO designation, it opens up a whole host of new tools to the Department of State, Treasury, and the DOJ to use against that group and their supporters, including being able to freeze their bank accounts, tap their communications, track their support network, and go after people who either contribute to in some, whether it's material support or financial support to that group, track their operations, and ultimately suppress or eliminate that group's ability to carry out violent acts of terrorism, whether in Europe or in the US. I made about a 15-minute video covering the moves that the US has been making against Antifa, basically starting in September, although there were some actions before then. President Trump made his declaration, which I'll speak about again here in just a minute. And I also got into this new designation against these four Europe-based groups and who they are. And then I talked a bit about a case out of North Texas that's called United States v. Arnold. This has to do with an Antifa cell in North Texas attacking an ICE detention facility on July 4th of this year. It's a unique case, and even though it's unique and it's a landmark case, it's not the first time that members of Antifa have been indicted for crimes, including crimes of violence, even attempted murder. But it is the first time that DOJ has brought terrorism-related charges against members of Antifa. And that's what makes this case landmark. In fact, I think if this case goes ahead and goes well, is a successful prosecution of these members and those charges stick, I think this case could serve as a template for future cases against members of Antifa. And I'd like to talk to you about a new development in this case, a couple new developments, including a superseding indictment. Welcome to my channel. Welcome to my videos. If you're new here, please consider subscribing or hitting the follow button, hit the bell, leave a like, and leave me a comment. Every time you leave a comment, especially on YouTube, it really helps my videos show up in people's algorithms, and just helps my videos get out there. In the description of this video and also on my profile, wherever you're watching or listening to this, you're going to find a link to my link tree. And there you can find all the places to follow me, all the places to watch, listen, and all the ways to support. Thank you to everybody who uses my affiliate links, keeps me caffeinated. And most of all, thank you to everybody who's a subscriber at justhuman.substack.com. Everything over there is free, but $7 a month subscription over there really helps me stay caffeinated and also pays my Pacer bills for the documents that I'm about to present to you. So thank you all very much. Let's get into the docket of United States v. Arnold. And to do that, I'm going to go with this thread, which, by the way, recently I have added a link on my link tree to my threads over the Thread Reader app. So if you're not on X but want to read my threads, you can find them there. All right. So federal prosecutors filed a superseding indictment last week in the criminal case against the North Texas Antifa cell. The case is remarkable because it is the first time an Antifa group has been hit with terrorism charges. On the night of July 4th, 2025, near Alvarado, Texas, the Prairieland ICE detention facility, the vehicles at the facility, and the guardhouse, as well as federal agents working there, and also responding Alvarado police officers, were attacked by a group of almost a dozen people. The attack was part vandalism, but also part ambush. It was a coordinated assault with several groups of attackers. One group used fireworks to distract, disorient, and suppress law enforcement, while another group vandalized structures and vehicles. And yet another group ambushed law enforcement with firearms. The attackers had body armor, they had med kits, and some of them carried firearms. A responding Alvarado police officer was shot in the neck by one attacker who was positioned in a nearby tree line. He did survive, and I did read that that officer has returned to duty now. Another assailant, who was also armed, fired somewhere between 20 and 30 rounds at responding ICE facility officers. Some of the people who actually worked at that facility were coming out of the building to see what the noise of the firecrackers were. and what the radio traffic was, and they were immediately fired upon. Here are some of the members of this group who were arrested. There's more than this, though. I got this graphic courtesy of Andy No, who has for years now done outstanding work tracking Antifa's operations. Initially, just days after the attack, 10 defendants were charged. Many of them had been arrested that same night on scene, but others got away. They were charged with attempted murder of a federal officer, 3 counts of that, and 3 counts of discharging a firearm in furtherance of a crime of violence. But this was just the initial complaint. Around September 22nd, 2025, things started to shift in this case. That's, I think, at least partially because Trump did a thing. While designating a group as a domestic terrorist organization like he did here in this executive order on September 22nd isn't really a thing. It's not a thing in U.S. law, domestic terrorist organization. It's kind of a media construct that's been made up. And that's probably why Trump chose to use this. That's not a thing. However, the president directing, quote, all relevant executive departments and agencies to utilize all applicable authorities to investigate, disrupt, and dismantle any and all illegal operations, especially those involving terrorist actions conducted by a group. That absolutely is a thing. And that was the real purpose of this executive order. While media ran around with their articles and their little clips on their night shows talking about how Trump can't do this, Antifa is an idea, domestic terrorist organization isn't real, the meat of this executive order was right here. Now, like I said, I've been aware of this case since that initial complaint. I've been tracking it. I've brought it up a couple times on my podcast, and then I made that 15-minute video about it last week. And one of the things I've noticed about this case is there's a lot of filings missing. Everywhere I have red box represents numerous filings that are absent from this docket. You can see it skips from 1 to 6, and then it skips from document 7 to document 31, and then it skips 31 to 39, misses 41 and 42 and 44 and 46, 47, 48, gets a few in a row right here, but then it skips 54 through 61, 61 through 77, 79, skips document 80 and 78, skips 83, and then it starts getting a little bit more regular. There's still some missing, but there's 107 docket entries here, and I think about half of them aren't actually on the electronic docket. It always stands out to me when things like that happen. I suspect this is due to the Pacer hack that the U.S. court system was alerted to in early August, and I've talked about that on my podcast and in other videos. Ever since that attack, courts have been keeping sealed or sensitive filings off of Pacer. Sometimes there's a placeholder entry that notices there and just says there's a document here, here's what it's about, but it's not filed. So that way it can't be hacked, at least not filed electronically. But more often than not, I think filings just aren't there. It's just, they just skip the docket entry. And yes, I'm a bit grumpy about this. Weeks after the president's executive order, a grand jury returned an indictment against 2 of the defendants in this case. Cameron Arnold, who's the namesake of the action, the case, he's AKA Autumn Hill, and then Zachary Evans. They're the 2 leaders, it would appear, of this terrorist group, or Antifa cell, I should say. The charges that the indictment, remember, we already had a complaint back in July against them, but now it's been upgraded to an indictment thanks to a grand jury. And this is when they were hit with the providing material support to terrorists, making this case the first of its kind. They also were hit with 3 counts of attempted murder of a federal officer and 3 counts of discharging a firearm in relation to a crime of violence. Extremely serious charges. For the first time, members of Antifa cell had been hit with terrorism charges. AG Bondi posted, as POTUS has made clear, Antifa is a left-wing terrorist organization. they will be prosecuted as such. By mid-October, just a couple weeks later, the FBI had made over 20 arrests tied to this case and related Antifa networks. I haven't been able to find all those cases. There's not 20 defendants in this case. So there's other actions happening, and I'll spend some time looking for them and see if I can find all those cases that are connected to this. But I'm thinking that a lot of these unfiled filings that are absent from here may have something to do with these other arrests. I'm also thinking that if any of those arrests have information such as cooperating witnesses or evidence, we may find out about them through filings in United States v. Arnold. Episode 348 of my podcast is where I initially touched on this landmark Antifa case. Last week, as I said, State Department designated those 4 European groups as FTOs, foreign terrorist organizations. What we didn't know at that time was that on the very same day, a superseding indictment was returned in this case. That's no coincidence. It cannot be a coincidence that the State Department did this on November 13th, and that is the very same day that DOJ files a superseding indictment in this case, right there. Boom. Love it. Now, we can't infer from that those 4 European-based groups are linked in some way to this case, but I think it shows coordination between the president, AG Bondi, Kash Patel, the Treasury Department by extension, because they're going to be involved in this, and then Marco Rubio at State Department. It shows that they're coordinating to all go after these Antifa cells. Now, one of the updates that has been happening in this case, things I've been tracking in it since my last video, was that the government filed in here that the government sent plea offers to all of the defendants. All the defendants who appeared on September 23rd, which was more than 10. I believe it was 15 defendants in total ended up being charged in this case. Yeah, 15. The government told the judge that we anticipate a fair number of those offers are going to be accepted. And for the defendants whom the government cannot reach agreement on a plea offer, the government intends to supersede the current indictment, adding those defendants into the Arnold/Evans indictment, as well as additional charges. This filing right here was part of a notice to the court that they would like to designate this case as complex. When a case is designated as complex, it basically waives the Speedy Trial Act and says there's so much discovery here, there's so much complication with this case that it's not feasible for either the prosecution or the defense to get the case to trial before the deadlines that are part of the Speedy Trial Act. So they're asking the judge to designate it complex so it waives that speedy trial right. And it serves both sides. So by noticing the court that they were doing this, or in noticing the court of this, they also let the court know that they had so far put together 5 terabytes of discovery. However, there's much more on the way. They next filed a motion, and it may have been on the same day. It doesn't really matter. It may be. It was really close to that noticing of complex, that they told the court that there's going to be classified information at issue here. So they're going to have to bring in the Classified Information Procedures Act, which is another complication, is in a reason to designate it complex. But it's highly interesting to me that this North Texas Antifa cell, this group, I already showed you their pictures right here. This motley crew, the US DOJ has classified intel on them, or classified intel that is related to their case, and it's information that they want to bring against them and use at trial. That's interesting. So they told the court of that, and then I feel like there was one other thing I was going to tell you guys about this. I don't see it. All right. Anyway, so that superseding indictment came out same day as the 4 European groups were designated, and now there are 9 defendants in the case. So that means 6 probably accepted a plea agreement with the government. And that means 6 former defendants in this case may end up being cooperating witnesses against these 9. Here's how the new indictment defines Antifa, and I think this is one of the reasons why this case can serve as a template, because now DOJ is defining what Antifa is in a criminal case against Antifa members. The Antifa cell. Antifa is a militant enterprise made up of networks of individuals and small groups primarily ascribing to a revolutionary anarchist or autonomous Marxist ideology, which explicitly calls for the overthrow of the United States government, law enforcement authorities, and the system of law. Antifa adherents have espoused insurrection and advocated violence to affect the policy and conduct of the U.S. government by intimidation and coercion. I think those words right there are what all of us can now use against any media talking heads, against any leftists. If you feel like engaging with them when they tell you that Antifa is just an idea, sorry. This is how the U.S. government defines Antifa. And you can also respond to people who say that by saying, well, the mafia is just an idea. After all, mafia just means family in Italian. Mafia. It just means family. But the DOJ, through prosecutions of members of La Cosa Nostra and others, put together a functioning definition and meaning to the word mafia. And we now all know what the mafia is and what it means when someone says that they're talking about a criminal organization. And this Antifa designation is no different. We're talking about a criminal organization. And it's been defined now in a court filing, in an indictment. Now, the charges that were added here really leveled this case up. Count 1 is now riot. Count 2 is providing material support to terrorists. Count 3 and 4, conspiracy to use and carry an explosive. Counts 5, 6, and 7, attempted murder of federal officers. Counts 8, 9, and 10, discharge of firearm and violent crime. Counts 11, count 11, corruptly concealing document or record. And count 12, conspiracy to conceal. I think those last 2 stem from some of the defendants in this case were trying to help those who weren't apprehended on scene on July 4th, trying to help them escape. But Texas was able to apprehend them. So those who are hit with the riot charge are Arnold and Evitz, and then Benjamin Song, I believe, is the leader of the group. I've seen that written that he is the leader. And then Batten, Morris, Rueda, Soto, both Sotos, I think they're brother and sister, Elizabeth Soto and Inez Soto. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 defendants are hit with a riot charge. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 defendants hit with material support to terrorists. 8 hit with count 3, conspiracy to use and carry explosive. 8 of them are hit with count 4, which is use and carry of an explosive. Count 5, attempted murder. That's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the defendants have been hit with count 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, so the attempted murder charges are against 5. There's 3 counts of attempted murder. Because there's a count for the Alvarado Police Department official, a count for the correctional officer, and a count for attempted murder on another federal officer. And then 5 of them, then those same ones are hit with 3 counts of discharging a firearm and commission of a violent crime. And then the concealing charge is where we get the other defendants brought in, Rolanado and Estrada. So, huge development in this case. I'm going to keep tracking it and covering this on these short videos, and then also on my main podcast, which now that I've done this short video, I'm going to, for my podcast listeners, I'm going to go into the indictment itself, and we're going to read through it and see exactly what DOJ has, at least according to the superseding indictment, what they have against these 9 defendants. So if you're on the podcast, let's dive into it. If you're not watching the podcast, check it out. This will be part of episode 355. All right,